Hi there and welcome to my channel. Tonight I would like to read to you an excerpt from a book that I recently read, which is called Gallant by V.E Schwab. This was a fantastic gothic ghost story, and here is the blurb to tell you a little more about it. 16-year-old Olivia Pryor is missing three things: a mother, a father, and a voice. Her mother vanished all at once, her father by degrees, and her voice was a thing she never had to start with. Her only companions are the ghouls she sees and her mother's journal, which captured a mind in turmoil. Near the end of her time at Maryland School for Girls, Olivia receives a letter from an uncle she's never met, summoning her to his estate, Gallant. But when she arrives, she discovers that the letter was years late. Her uncle is dead, and the estate is empty, save for her cousin Matthew and the servants. Olivia is permitted to remain, but must follow two rules. Don't go out after dusk, and always stay on the right side of the crumbling wall. But Gallant is a house of secrets, a house sitting in lonely vigil, a place where the ghouls are powerful. As Olivia searches for answers about her family, her past, she discovers a dark reflection of everything she knew, an ancient realms where ghosts take form and the Dark Master sits waiting for her. I will also read you an extract taken from chapter 18. Tap, 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 I went beyond the wall. Tap, 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 and I met death. Tap, 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 tap. He wraps one finger as the dancers dip and twirl their dizzy circle, so like the sculpture in the study, the single push that sent it spinning. The man who is not a man looks somehow ancient, but not old. His skin is not creased, yet here and there it peels away, the polished bone beneath showing through like stone under thinning ivory. And that is how she sees that there are pieces of him missing, not lost to shadow like the ghouls, but carved away. The joint of one finger, the edge of one cheek, a collarbone splintered at the neck of his shirt. The skin has been flayed back around each injury, and yet he does not seem to be in pain, just bored. A twitch of movement on the platform, and Olivia tears her gaze from the stranger in the high-backed chair and sees that he is not alone. Three figures stand about him, as grey as the dancers, but rendered darker, a draftsman's hand pressed harder to the page, and dressed not like revellers but knights, a suit of armour shared between them. The first is built like a brick, sturdy and stout, a steel pauldron bound across his shoulder. The second is built like a whisper, willow thin, a plate of metal on their chest. The third is built like a wolf, short and strong, a gauntlet gleaming on her hand. Excuse me. The range around the high-backed chair, the stout one grim-faced behind the throne, the thin one just beside it, the short one on her haunches against the wall, and even though they are fully there, even though they have garments and faces, they remind her of nothing so much as shadows cast at different times of day. They watch the dance without watching, the faraway look of the weary and the tired and the unimpressed as their master taps, keeping time with a music only he can hear. And then, with a sudden jerk, he rises, unfolds from his chair, and steps down among the dancers. They part and twirl, and as he moves between them, one by one, they die. It is not a human death. There is no blood, no scream. They simply crumble, like petals dropping from long dead flowers, bodies breaking into ash as they hit the floor. The master of the house does not seem to notice, does not seem to care. His dead white eyes only watch as they fall to every side. Collapsing in a silent, terrible tide until there is only one dancer left. Her partner has just crumbled, and she looks down at the dust covering her dress and blinks. As if waking from a spell, she sees the ruins of the ball, the creature moving toward her, and her face, which had until now been a mask of calm, begins to break into confusion, into fear. Her mouth opens in a silent gasp, a plea. He reaches for her hand, and she shuffles back, but it is not enough. He catches her wrist and draws her close. Now, he says, and his voice isn't loud, but there is nothing for it to overcome, and so it carries like a crack of thunder through the hollow room. I would never hurt you. The dancer, excuse me again, the dancer doesn't believe him, not at first, but then the master sweeps her back into the motions of the dance, the two of them turning in elegant circles through the ashes of the fallen, and with each step she relaxes a little more into her role, letting him lead until the fear ebbs from her face, the steady calm resumes, and then he stops dancing and lifts her chin and says, "See?" And she's just beginning to smile when he says, "Enough." And the word is as swift and violent as a breath on a candle, snuffing it out. The dancer crumbles against him, her body sagging into ash, and he sighs. "Honestly," he says, brushing the dust from his front, as if annoyed that it might stain. A pale white fragment shines on the wooden floor where the dancer stood, and at first Olivia thinks it is a slip of paper or a seed, but then it rises and tucks itself against the tear along his jaw, and she realizes it was a shard of bone. A sound fills the room, like rattling, like rain, and more bones skitter over the floor. They rise from the ashes of each fallen body. Fragments no bigger than a knuckle, a thumbnail, a tooth. The master stands at the centre of it all, waiting as the slivers shudder and draw toward him, fitting themselves back into the places where his skin had peeled away. It is like a cup breaking in reverse. 100 brittle shards, returning to the porcelain surface, rebuilding the pattern, erasing the cracks. Olivia watches, half in horror, half in awe, as paper-white skin closes over the bones. Watches as the man who is not a man rolls his head on his shoulders as if working out a kink. Watches as he spins on his heel, turning around the armour-clad soldiers on the platform, the only ones still there. "Anyone care for a dance?" he asks with a flourish. They stare back at him, one grim, one sad, one bored, but they say nothing. His face flickers, quick as a candle, between anger and amusement. "None of you are any fun these days," he says, marching across the ballroom to the balcony doors. He flings them open and steps out into the dark. This whole time, Olivia has been holding her breath. Now, at last, she lets it out. It makes almost no sound, just a small exhale, the faintest whoosh of air. But the dancers are all gone. The other sounds gone with them, and in the silence, even a breath makes too much noise. A head twitches toward the open door. It's one of the soldiers, the short one balanced on her haunches at the platform's edge. Her head swivels, dark eyes shifting to the ballroom door just as Olivia retreats into the safety of the hall. She presses herself flat into the pool of dark beyond the doors, squeezing her eyes shut and hoping that she was fast enough that when the shadows looked her way, it saw nothing. That by the time it scanned the open doors, she was already gone. She clutches her mother's journal and tries to disappear into the wall of the house. Olivia has never been the sort to pray. Back at Merrylands, she was told to kneel and knit her fingers and speak to God. She couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't touch. She didn't want to get her knuckles wrapped, so she knelt and she knit her fingers and pretended. She has never believed in higher powers, because if there were higher powers, then they took her father and mother, they took her voice, they left her in Merrylands with nothing but a book. But there are lower powers, stranger ones, and there in the dark, behind the door, she prays to them. She prays for help, right until she hears the sound of boots, loud as bells, on the ballroom floor, the clank of a hand flexing inside his gauntlet, the scrape of a blade sliding free of its sheath, right until she sees the shadow cut across the moonlit floor, and then she runs. She goes the wrong way. It isn't her fault. She knows she should have run for the front door, but she'd have had to step right into the soldier's path. So instead, she flees further down the hall, away from the door, and into the heart of the house. Her steps are too loud, her breath is too loud, everything is too loud. And there is a wolf on her heels.